Today we are September 30th, final day of the month, just before, at least for Northern Hemisphere growers. We're going to dive deep into our growing seasons with saffron blossoms and the whole harvesting, so people will be certainly busy. And we wanted to bring this opportunity to do a ask us anything, really, with Victor here, who's going to be coming shortly once we figure out his technical difficulties. And if you're able to send us questions prior to this chat, this AMA, excellent, great. If you want to throw in any sort of questions you have in the chat as well, we'll have our manager certainly looking out for questions and we'll get them answered as well. But we certainly have a lot for you packed in today. We are just, if you're joining now, having a little bit of technical difficulties with my colleague Victor from Veles Farming, who will be joining. Hopefully his microphone is working now.
I hope it's working now.
It is indeed.
Yes, finally. Hello.
Excellent. And Victor, we have a variety of people coming in. And we have a lot of questions to get answered today. I already want to give us a quick introduction, but if you want to quickly say who you are for those of us that just joined.
So hello, I'm Victor. I'm one of the co-founders of Veles Farming. So as you know, Veles Farming is an indoor saffron farm. We grow one of the highest quality saffrons for pharmaceutical space at the moment, and we are a pioneer in the space of saffron in a way that through innovation and partnerships, likewise with Khalil over here, we are trying to push the boundaries of the saffron community in a way, or the saffron industry, to engage more people and to share the know-how or the knowledge throughout, so we can all be a bit better every day.
Excellent. And it's a true honor and pleasure to have you here, my friend. And on my side, just for those that are, again, new to the community, because we've had quite a few people joining in both this live AMA and just in the past month. So certainly a lot more interest in both the indoor vertical farming world and, of course, just saffron cultivation at large. My name is Khalil Mirza, of course. I am the founder at Saffrosystems. I'm also the CEO there. And I basically got into my whole work with saffron through an internship with the North American Center for Saffron Research and Development, first of its kind in North America at University of Vermont. Had a great mentor from Iran, Arash Galagogabahani. And through that internship, I was just so intrigued by the crop and all of its certain promises for both health all the way to farming. And so that's how I got involved. My technical level, I certainly have a great whole sort of holistic set of experiences here, from the research on cultivation all the way to masters in nutrition and integrative health with a concentration in herbal medicine. So we'll certainly be able to get all of those questions everyone has answered about the whole 360 experience with saffron, from cultivation to utility beyond the farm. So let's dive in, Victor. I know I have a variety of questions here. I know you got a bunch of questions as well. Do you want to just go 1-1, 1-1, or how do you want to do it?
We can do 1-1. I can let you start.
All right, excellent. So one of the questions we got is from a grower who says, I'm looking to get started with an indoor vertical farm for saffron. Where do I start?
It's a very good question. I think in the beginning, everybody who's getting in the saffron industry without having any prior knowledge about saffron industry is to either, let's say, scouting for knowledge online or talking with somebody from the field or from the industry. So if you're trying to set up an indoor farm, I would suggest indoor farmer. If outdoor farmer, and talking with them about the process and the business overall. Of course, they are not going to share all the details, but they will let you know crucial pieces of information that you will need to start your business. And then I wouldn't worry too much about starting a big farm. For what maybe even is very good for beginners is to get certain amount of bulbs. I would say maybe 100 of bulbs, and try a cycle of growing at home even. This is what we did as well in the very, very, very beginning. We got the first order was 1,000 of bulbs, and we grew it at home because in a way you can regulate the temperature. Now, especially with the outdoor temperature going down, fine enough to replicate the conditions. And then I would see if, let's say, also depending on the part of the world where I am, how can I set up a farm? What we suggest if you want to do it, I would say economically, or if you want to start it as a business, the minimum, let's say, space is 50 meters square of growing area, which we suggest with starting for farmers in order to make some profits. And then basically based on your knowledge or market expertise, I would, if you have somebody, let's say from certain industries that you can talk to, which can help you sell, it's very good. But then for a small farm, I would start with B2C market, and then just basically brand myself as a local option, sustainable option, and high quality option in a way that you can sell them to people. But the first part would be getting knowledge about the industry and everything I'll need. For this, I'll put a small plug. We with Khalil run a course as well, or we'll be running a course. It will launch in beginning of October or sometimes end of October, where we go through everything you need for growing, business, selling, testing, everything included saffron. It's like a little masterclass with everything you will need. So I will start with this, getting knowledge of what you will need and all the information.
That's fantastic. All right, you want to throw me one now?
I have one for sourcing the bulbs.
Okay, excellent question. Yeah. There are so many. I know, Victor, you also have your company that goes through one of your own preferred vendors. Of course, Saffrosystems, we don't produce or sell any saffron or corms, but we're, of course, integrated with so many different entities out there. While we can't, of course, go ahead and suggest any one particular company, we don't have any affiliations with any of these companies. We do have a couple that we've heard from growers that they certainly like a lot in both the northern and southern hemisphere. And one in particular that has, I think, a really good balance. I know the president very well. He's attended a lot of the same webinars and, of course, the, just seminars live in person that I have in the past. His name is Hans Roosevelt from Rocco Saffron. And Hans is just a wealth of information when it comes to saffron corms, and they are based out of Holland, and they both do northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere corm distribution, and they do a variety of sizes: organic, conventional. And one reason, again, that I like them so much is because they not only have really high quality bulbs, or excuse me, corms. There's a slight difference between bulbs and corms, but we don't have to get into that. Some people just use the terms interchangeably. And they just have such a strong, stringent sort of process for how they handle the corms, all the way to the research that they then integrate into their industrial process. So they're certainly very up to date with things that Victor and I have discussed in our previous webinar, and perhaps we'll touch on today if there are questions around it. But temperature regulation for corms to help them stay in dormancy when you're traveling, to different parts of the northern and southern hemispheres, and of course, beyond that. It's one of the key things for helping, increase flower emergence and initiation, right? Is temperature manipulation, right? And so, for any of those that unfortunately, let's say, just got their corms here in the northern hemisphere, I'm sure you guys are noticing that all these sprouts are coming out. That's time, got a little bit of time to get them in the ground, or in an indoor vertical farm, as we'll discuss here, in certain different techniques on how to do that. But at the end of the day, Rocco Saffron is fantastic. I've heard a lot of good stuff about them. And another company that, while isn't used as much, I have heard good things about them nonetheless, is Dutch Grown, also based out of the Netherlands. Of course, I don't want to disparage. There are certainly many other great companies out there, I'm sure, across India, Iran, of course, maybe even Spain, Italy, I know that there are certain places, just to put a side note in there, that do not allow the importation of corm, such as Japan, which is a very new regulation they just set up there. Again, so many things to dive in when it comes to corm sourcing. But Victor, do you want to add any other things in there in terms of companies that you guys have used in Microlot as well?
I can follow up on the example of the Netherlands. We have other company that we like, Sativus, from there. So it's Jaap. We have Hans and Jaap. I agree with the point that from the Northern Hemisphere, Netherlands is one of the best countries to source the bulbs from, as there is a long tradition going way back, also with tulips and other crops of propagating these corms and selling them worldwide. And then based on, I think also regionality, I think wherever you are in the world, you can source bulbs from your surrounding area without too much of a hassle if you know the right people. So this is something that we do as well. Like you, if somebody is looking for a source, we can connect them. We are happy to connect them with the suppliers that we have, so you can get the best bulbs as well. Then maybe I would add a small tip with bulbs. When you get the bulbs, you always try to get the biggest bulbs possible. That's why I like what you said with the timing. You need to understand when to order bulbs as well, based on the hemisphere, the time of the flowering, everything, and then how it works as well. In some cases, with some orders, you have to also pre-order the bulbs, because the biggest bulbs, they always sell out fast. That's basically like hot bread, fresh hot bread. They go out very fast because that's the most demanded one. So you have to put in sometime your order even a year before, so you secure the bulbs that you want in the size that you want.
Excellent, excellent. And we'll certainly add on a couple other healthy tips towards the end here. We just want to make sure we get through, of course, all our questions. So Victor, I have a nice one here. I thought it was very interesting considering your trajectory at Veles Farming, how you guys went from this small container to a much, much larger facility. I think you can both empathize and, of course, provide some really good feedback here. So this grower says, I'm growing saffron hydroponically, but I need some help with a few details in relation to both scaling up and turning it into a business and not just a hobby. So what are your thoughts there, Victor, for that type of farmer that is, just on the precipice of getting started here, and they're kind of weighing this: do I grow much more, or do I just keep it as a hobby? What are your thoughts?
This is a very case to case, I would say, sometimes, because all saffron farms are a bit different from each other. All farms are unique in their own way. But if you want to make the jump from hobby to business in a way, first I would start with either scouting or securing some market demand. If you know that you can sell your saffron, I don't see a problem why you cannot continue into it and make it a bit bigger. Even if you make the basic calculations, I think all around the world there are small business loans that you can basically jump into. As we said, you don't have to build a big farm. I really like the example of containers, because it gets you basically in a way a unit of measurement, and setting up one container is not as expensive as setting up a large-scale vertical farm, and you can then just scale up the containers one by one. So you add a container next to it, container above it, and it's very easy, very easy. So you don't have to, don't think about it too much in a way. I think this you have to let the farm also grow organically based on your setup as well. So if you use containers, I know some people just have a storage space and they are limited, nowhere to scale up. But then you can rent out another space as well after. But I would focus on confirming market demand, that there is demand for the saffron that you are trying to grow, or you are able to sell the saffron that you are able to grow. Once you have this, then I would focus in a way, if you want to do it indoor, outdoor. I think based on the question, it's indoor. If you have space, because if you already have space, you don't need to buy a container. You can just repurpose the space to be a saffron farm. It doesn't need to be a 5-meter tall storage space, which is 160 meters square. It can start with a simple room. In a way, there is a lot of people, especially in India, but also around the world, which just started from their room as well. That's why I mentioned the example of us starting very small in the beginning, and also the first batch, the first 1,000 bulbs that we ordered, and we just grew them at home in a way to see how everything goes, how everything reacts, especially to go over the first process on the smaller number of bulbs as well. And then I would just, once you have this secured in a way, I would calculate the basic numbers that you will need for the business. Since you want to make the jump from hobby to business, and if the numbers make sense, I would give it a shot. Why not?
Excellent. Nice answer. All right, what do you got for me?
How do I set up an indoor farm? What equipment do I need? And basically tips on what exactly will I need to buy. Maybe this is a bit more question for me, but I'll let you go, and worst case, I'll fill in.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, of course, Victor here is the indoor vertical farming specialist. That said, and as he stated earlier, of course, we are in collaboration to just bring this amazing resource together on a Saffron book and course that's super comprehensive. So I can certainly pull little pieces in from the book there. But of course, things you're going to need. Let me put it this way. I'll start with the most important thing, and then I'll hand it over to you. But in my opinion, one of the most important things anyone needs to focus on if they're going to grow indoors is HVAC. I know even with my experience is just trying to grow at the Saffrosystems headquarters in a very tight-knit space, that, hey, if you're growing in a facility that has very poor airflow, you're going to have a strong risk for a lot of pests and diseases. And even with, we were talking about outdoor farming, you have this issue where if you have pest infestation, which most saffron farms do, you're not only talking about potential yield loss, but you're talking about complete loss of your corms. And so I imagine the same will apply indoors. So I'm going to go ahead and say HVAC is probably one of the more important things when it comes to just having the foundation set up and making sure that your operation is going to be viable. And now, if Victor, you want to take over to talk about, hey, how do you make it now, in a state where you're thriving, for different pieces of equipment that can help with everything from temperature modulation, humidity, all the way to light fixation, so on and so forth.
So I'll add or build upon what you said. I think I agree. HVAC is in a way the most crucial part. I will simplify it to environment control. This is the bread and butter of the indoor farm. So you will need it in any indoor space where you are growing anyway. But I agree with the HVAC, or let's say a system which controls the environment, is the most crucial one. Then you build up upon them. But as I mentioned there is not all, each farm is different. Everybody's setup is a bit different unless you buy a custom made setup from somebody. But you can start a farm very simple. If you already have space, just refurbish it. You can start with shelving like this, what is behind me, and you can put saffron bulbs in it, and you have a vertical farm that is indoor in a way as well. So it doesn't have to be complicated. In the beginning, I would also cut away all the technology that you don't need to use, to basically just save up on costs, as in a way indoor farming, once you get to the big leagues, gets a bit more cost intensive in the beginning, because you need a large amount of money for investments for infrastructure. But in the beginning, once you starting out, simple racking like this you can buy from IKEA, shelving for 25 euros will do just fine, and you can buy a bunch of them and just use those as your basically a vertical farm setup. So you can build let's say I will call it like a prototype farm, or your first small farm, for very, very cheap. And you'll just need, I think in the beginning, maybe HVAC as well, depending on where you can source it from and what price, for what size of room, depending as well. But for our first R&D facility, when we just did the container as well, we just worked with simple AC. Simple AC just did everything for us. You don't need as much lighting as well. With saffron, it's very good. It's not as light intensive as other crops indoors, like leafy greens and such. So with lighting, you can go very simple. Simple white light is enough as well. And then if you are able to control the temperatures, that's all you need. So you need temperature, humidity, CO2, airflow, and light if you can. But if you don't have to at the beginning, we suggest starting very small. I think to go about it with I will call it the frugal way. So you spend as little amount for the farm setup to see and get it up and running, because you have to start producing in order to sell, in order to create money as well. So this is something I would say is crucial in order to start up.
Yeah, excellent point also on the CO2. I mean, Victor, I don't know if you and I have talked about it, but some of these really nice climate change modeling studies where they predict how saffron yield will be affected by increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And it's so interesting to see some of these studies pointing to, obviously, it's one of these hormetic stresses, right, where just enough will be useful, but too much or too little even, and you're crossing different thresholds that actually lead to suboptimal conditions for
Exactly.
saffron, and of course many other plants. So very interesting point on gas control as well. All right, I have a very interesting one here uh, that I think both of us might be able to answer in a more unique way than one would be able to find out just searching on Google or even using some sort of AI tool. So one of these growers asked, one of the problems I'm working on is that a lot of our offspring corms are very small, about 3/8 of an inch in diameter. I want to carefully plant them in soil that has everything they might need to grow larger. How do we accomplish that? Victor, do you want to start, and then I'll also add on?
So basically, adding size to the corms, that is the underlying question in there, right?
Yeah.
So this is done in the propagation phase, basically after the flowering part. My question for this farmer would be as well if it's outdoor or indoor, because if it's outdoor, there is multiple, let's say, issues that can be as well. There can be a soil issue as well. If your soil doesn't contain the nutrients that are necessary for saffron, of course, you can add them with the fertilizer and the nutrients you'll be adding. But if you have an incorrect soil, let's say maybe the salinity or the acidity of the soil is too high, that can lead into the let's say the growing phase of the saffron bulb as well, so it doesn't grow as much as it would be, because we also, for the indoor part, we suggest only bulbs with 20 grams or higher, because it's more economically viable. But there can be issue of soil, or you not adding the right fertilizer at the moment, because also in the propagation phase, there is a cycle in a way that you use a bit of a different nutrient in the beginning and in the end as well, also as the leaf grows and also throughout the process. So it will need, so you can have a mismatch in this, you can provide the wrong nutrients at the wrong time, so this can be an issue as well. I'll let you continue on this as well, if you maybe have something to add.
Yeah, it's a great foundation. Yeah, I'd say while there isn't a whole lot of literature on offspring corm, I should say nursery corm propagation. So, in other words, using very small corms, let's say under 5 grams, to produce larger offspring corms over the course of, let's say, 2, 3 years, even. Um, we do have some really nice anecdotal data from, I know, growers in Vermont that have had success here in the United States, all the way to some of my colleagues who are in the research field that kind of have this, I'd say, expert consensus along with me, which is that even if you have very, very small offspring corms, if you set up a corm nursery plot, let's say, where you basically put the corms in a certain density, certain depth, you might be able to increase their size after, let's say, 2 years. Um, Now, the reason why is a couple fold. One, corm density plays a huge role in the amount of nutrients per corm available. And generally speaking, a lower corm density will help lead to larger offspring corms. Of course, there will be diminishing returns, whereby if you have too much spacing between corms, you're now just wasting space on your farm. On the opposite side of the spectrum, when there's too much crowding, it's difficult for each corm to get enough nutrients to grow larger. And aside from that, you also increase the potential for things like corm rot and other, let's say, fungal diseases, and of course, things like mites to go ahead and spread between corms. And so that's also can be an issue of diminishing returns, where you have too much on the opposite side and it leads to poor outcomes. Last but not least, when it comes to corm depth, generally speaking, around 6 inches into the soil will be your general rule of thumb recommendation. But if you go lower than that, actually, you can essentially stimulate the corm to, you know, focus more, let's say, on offspring corm development. Whereas if you go a little bit higher, you might actually get a little bit better, let's say, percent yield across the board for all the corms you plant. So these are two major things to consider. And the last thing I'll just plug in there is the reason why we do 2 years actually versus like 1 year is because that cycle of having, let's say, the corm deep enough in the ground where every year it comes up by, just a little bit around an inch or two in the soil is if you start very deep and it comes up just a little bit more, it's still not at a very high enough depth where it's going to be, let's say, focusing more of its energy on flowering, which is more of an incidental process, evolutionarily speaking, for saffron, because it is self-propagated, so it's a sterile crop. So there are a lot of fun things to play around with. And so for this grower in particular, other than what Victor said, I'd say focus on really having a nursery plot where you're able to go ahead and, ensure that you can keep these corms in the ground for a little bit longer and at a higher depth, maybe a little bit lower density, and play around with that and see if that works for you. Otherwise, certainly follow what Victor said and probably get your soil tested, see how basically how nutrition is for the plants. And of course, if you need any soil organic matter, things like this will certainly be fruitful.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Next question. I think this one is a perfect one for you. So you guys have a course on growing, but I'm curious about the after process: drying, testing, and maybe also sales.
Excellent. Yeah, this is one of my favorite areas of the research literature, and something I focused on was post-harvest drying. So it's very interesting. Let me start real quick with just some of the traditional knowledge based off of so many studies I've pulled together over the past 7 years, which is a lot of the traditional drying methods will point to trends that can, kind of be then further examined in specific studies, and that's exactly what's been done. And it's led to, I would say, a pretty strong consensus on what's most optimal. So, for starters, usually people like to say that the best quality saffron comes from Spain. Part of the reason is La Mancha region is super famous for their saffron, but when researchers have dove into why that is the case, what we have found, and when I say we, I mean the royal we of to the research community, has found that the way they actually toast their saffron is the term they use. It will be over a hot coal bed, and they use a silk sleeve basically to hold the saffron. So that's a little bit more temperature regulated, so the stigma filaments don't burn or become over dried. And this is tend to lead to what we call high temperature, low time dehydration method that is very useful for stimulating the production of saffronol in saffron. Saffronol is one of the main aroma compounds that gives that just characteristic saffron smell. And of course, that plays into favor as well, since there is a strong correlation between olfaction, our smell, and of course, flavor, taste. So saffronol is produced from picocrosin. Picocrosin is one of the main flavor compounds in saffron. And another pathway for the production of saffronol is a compound called HTCC, which is basically a storage molecule, a storage reservoir is what you could think of it as for saffronol. Both of these things under high temperature basically get transferred into saffronol. So you need high temperature to help stimulate that process. Now, don't get me wrong. You will see, therefore, a correlation between higher saffronol levels and lower picocrosin levels, and that, in most cases, can be desirable. Now, a lower temperature dehydration method that lasts for a longer time is usually seen in countries like Iran, Morocco, your more, let's say traditional producing regions that tend to have larger bulk. And part of the reason why, for starters, they can do it is because they live in a semi-arid, arid climate, very low humidity. That would not work in a place like where I'm at today at Saffrosystems in Maryland, where it's super humid, and you would just have so much fungal mold, and it would not work well. So low temperature dehydration methods for longer times, in some cases, has been shown to increase crocin, because crocin is a temperature volatile compound, in that if temperature is reached too high, crocin will break down. Um, and so don't get me wrong, however, because there are some studies that can test this, whereby higher temperatures for lower times is perhaps that, again, perfect threshold for both increasing crocin and saffronol. So the jury is still out on whether crocin, I would argue, is more optimized in lower temperature or higher temperature dehydration methods. But no doubt, for a higher quality smelling saffron, you're going to want a higher temperature dehydration method. Post harvest, after drying, is also crucial. So finding a uh, means of storage for your containers for saffron is both a business decision, as Victor can certainly attest to, in terms of how you present your product, all the way to a let's say research, scientific decision in how you preserve the best quality saffron for the longest period of time. And the only thing I'll add to that, and then Victor, if you want to add into just how do you determine what packaging to go with, is that there is really nice literature showing that saffronol will actually increase over time in well preserved. When I say preserved, in a properly stored saffron sample. That when I say properly stored, I mean low UV light exposure to the saffron, not fluctuating temperatures. Generally, a little bit cooler is better. Things like that will tend to lead to a higher production of saffronol over time in already dried and stored saffron. And again, part of that reason, if we go back to these two molecules, picocross and HTCC, is that HTCC will actually break down enzymatically over time in dried saffron that releases more saffronol. But do you want to put a plug in how do you choose packaging, Victor?
For packaging, it all depends again on the industry where we are selling. For B2C, has to be catchy, but it's smaller sizing. Basically, you sell 1 grams to 3 gram packages in a way to people. So then again, I will just add on as well. I want to highlight that drying and storing, even after you did everything correctly in the growing process and you harvested correctly, you didn't waste any saffron. You can ruin everything by drying and then also storing. So I agree. I want to highlight as well what Khalid mentioned, that it's a business decision for you to store your saffron well, because then if you don't store it well, you can ruin the quality, and quality is your business in a way, especially in the beginning. So you don't want to ruin this. And then there was a underlying second question for maybe testing as well. If you could maybe touch upon this, and then I can again add something.
Yeah, testing has always been a very tough topic, in that depending on where you are, you either have more or less resources available to you. So testing is carried out through ISO 3632 methods and standards. There is a draft standard by the Codex Committee, which is yet to be released. And usually Codex is a UN hosted, United Nations hosted entity that basically will help offer, let's say, cheaper versions of standards. They're still just as rigorous, in my opinion. I met with both the committee from ISO 3632 and the committee from Codex maybe 6 months ago, 8 months ago, and went over, just in my opinion, some strengths and weaknesses, and just wanted to see what was on the horizons for both organizations. And so, yeah, the draft standard for our saffron from Codex will look fairly similar to ISO 3632. And they're debating changing one or two minor things. But generally speaking, the grading and classification of saffron from these two standards works mostly on crocin and picocrosin. Unfortunately, saffronol just has to be at or above a certain concentration, so that doesn't have differing levels. So they're going to be mostly focusing on your coloring and flavor properties in terms of how your saffron grades. And to get that tested, of course, you have to go to a laboratory that offers these tests. If you're fortunate enough and you can access, let's say, your local agricultural research institution from a university, then they might be able to offer you a much better rate. I don't think they're going to be a commercially viable option, let's say, for doing testing, let's say, every year. or every however many times you want to do it. That said, other institutions like Eurofins, which I know Victor has some experience with, they're much larger, chemical laboratory setup. They tend to run a little bit more pricey. However, they are robust and they certainly can follow ISO 3632 standards. My company has certainly been working on, helping growers to find and access testing. And again, like I said earlier, it's one of those things where, especially in the United States, is a little bit more scarce than what would be most ideal. But Victor, do you want to add anything onto that?
I can just add that, as you said, the ISO 3632, that's like the golden standard in a way. That's like your basic starting point. Then depending on the industry, you will have to need other tests, microbiological tests, tests for pesticides or herbicides or other tests depending on the needs of the customer. But this all depends on the industry where you are selling. So then I would just basically, based on where you are selling, I would just focus on getting those necessary tests or certifications for the product to be able to sell for your necessary category, so you don't have to go overboard with testing, because it, as you mentioned, costs money. Also takes some saffron, even though it's not that much, but it takes some saffron away, and it costs money as well. So you have to take all this in mind as well. But because with the grading, you always try to go for the highest grade, so grade A, because that's where most of the money in the market is as well. So basically, it's super negin and grade A. That is the category which everybody tries to be in, because that's where most of the money in the saffron field is, and that is the most used part of the flower as well, or the most demanded one as well.
Excellent. And this question, Victor, kind of plays well into what we just were talking about. So this new grower, who also works in an ag tech company, is curious about learning more about this global saffron trade. And so I know you and I could talk about that for quite a long time, because there's so many interesting aspects of the supply chain, and of course, even just the international relations and political aspects of these countries as it relates to saffron. But do you want to start us off about, maybe a basic overview of, some of the major players when it comes to the global saffron trade?
So as we know, Iran is I will call it the bread and butter of the saffron industry, as the majority, even from 85 to 90% of the global production is coming from Iran. So which is a lot. Then in the EU we have players like Spain, but Spain again just repackages some of the saffron from Iran and makes it Spanish. But we have Greece, Italy, then we have Morocco, you have India, you have Pakistan. Then maybe from the US you have countries like Chile, where basically all the regions around the world where the area is similar to Iranian, there is saffron production, but Iran is the majority. We have to understand that saffron is a commodity, and it's a commodity market, so it moves on with, let's say, news as well, because during harvest time there is more supply, so the price will be lower. Before harvest, the price will be a bit higher because the demand is still high, but the supply has been lower because everybody is waiting for the other. So you have to understand all this when you are in the saffron market. Then again, specifically if you are going into categories, so you have saffron for food, then again saffron for processing, saffron for pharma, saffron for whatever category you need or you might sell to. And then basically you just have to understand how the market works in a way. So we, for example, for our case, we work with pharmaceutical companies. There it works on bigger orders, but everything needs to be tested, stuff like this. And basically the supply chain is global in a way, but there are also local opportunities to use saffron. So I would just focus on this, understanding your product. So having the tests telling you what the compounds are or how strong it is, because maybe based on the color or the taste, if it's higher one or the other, you can also look into specific industry to enter with your saffron too. But just understanding how the saffron market works, who are your competitors in a way. So basically it's saffron coming from Iran, it's the majority of the market, so this is your biggest competition in a way. I think the hardest part for beginner saffron growers is to comprehend that they are not in maybe in the commodity market, on the large scale commodity market with outdoor farmers, because in a way you cannot compete on the price that is coming from Iran or from Pakistan, because they use child labor. This is the business model that it's been working on for thousands of years now, and it's the same is just continuing. That's why the saffron is very cheap as well. It's expensive only because of the traders, because they eat away all the margins and they take a lot of profit. But if you source saffron from an Iranian farmer, you can get it for very low amount compared when you are buying it, let's say in the EU or in the US from a trader or a commodity purchaser or from a shop as well. So I would just try to have a look, maybe read a market study as well. And then again, I would suggest talking to farmers or people from within the industry. You can learn a lot of insights on how the specific industry works as well. And you will have a bit of a better understanding on how the markets move, where can I tap into, where can I not tap into, what is the pricing range for each category and stuff like this.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'll just add to that, which is, like Victor said, a majority of saffron that comes from Iran and is distributed to countries like Spain, Dubai, Azerbaijan. These countries tend to rebrand that saffron as their own, and they make significantly more margins than these Iranian growers. And as Victor said, usually it's these middlemen that end up bulking the price up and making more money than the Iranian farmers themselves. So it's interesting because it's a great, unique opportunity as well for new markets, or I should say, for new players in the market to actually take some of that share of demand. And part of the reason is, we're finding also that the adulteration rate in the whole market is just so high. It's something my company's been working on as a moonshot to obsolete the adulteration of saffron. And we do that currently through some really nice technology that we've been developing. But where I'm going with this is, from our read of the literature, a minimum conservative estimate of around 33% of saffron is adulterated in the world. So if you just take that for what it's worth, and in some markets it's been found to be as high as 90% plus in samples of 300 plus, you're talking about a very good opportunity in terms of how you start your business, where you choose to play, and how you approach the game, right? So as Victor also said in the previous question that he answered, how you package and brand your saffron, whether you want to go with things like organic label, or put certain, titles on your saffron, such as supernatural, things like this. These can make a huge difference. And, Victor and I have a really nice portion of the book and course that is just focusing on marketing, where we dive into food surveys and insights from a lot of these really nice academic and nonprofit organizations that provide this information. And we help distill it down and saying, hey, if you're a grower and you want to compete, what is the best way to brand and market your saffron? We provide all that information throughout. Anyway, it's a very interesting, topic that we could certainly spend just a whole webinar talking about the whole saffron trade. But just to make sure we get at least another one or two questions in here, do you want to take over real quick, Victor?
Yeah. So I have a question. How do I tell good saffron from bad saffron, and how can I spot fake saffron?
Such a great question. Yeah, so there's the so-called color test, right, where you're obviously looking at your saffron and you can sort of tell if there's any sort of discrepancies in how the saffron looks. You can feel the saffron, and if you actually rub it in your hands, you should see that the saffron provides a nice pure. When I say pure, I mean it's just very nice yellow color. If there's any sort of spottiness to it, substances that look like they shouldn't be there, like let's say there's some sort of grainy, material that ends up on your hands, that's usually a sign that it's poor quality adulterated saffron. As we just said, roughly 33% minimum, you can definitely bet are going to be adulterated. There's the water test, where you just put your saffron in water and see how the color changes over time. If it's a very rapid, like, you put it in there and it immediately turns red or something, or a different color, it's generally going to mean that there is some sort of synthetic dye added to it. It should be a low but robust yellow that if you leave it over time and even shake it or add other things like, some sort of acidic compound to it, these things will increase the amount of crocin that is extracted, and therefore it will turn from yellow to orange to red with time and different extraction processes, different solvents in this case. Obviously, the taste, you can always do a taste test. These are called organoleptic tests, where you basically rely on sensory profiles to really understand, is this thing legit in terms of both quality and in terms of purity. Again, I don't want to keep putting a plug into Saffrosystems for this technology, but we are working on a technology where you are going to be eventually able to take out your phone, take a picture of saffron, and immediately say, this is pure, this is fake. This will definitely help, I think, the market advance to, more true, fair players that actually put in the effort to provide a pure, high quality saffron. So again, hopefully we'll have that out, in the next year or two. But anyway, there's so many different ways to also go down the line of detecting quality of saffron, which is now a different story. But I think those are going to be the major ones. Of course, you can smell your saffron as a last plug into determining quality. You want to add anything else to that, Victor?
I think you went over the main methods, let's say, of how to this. Maybe I would add a small tip when buying saffron. Never always buy either whole threads. Never buy powders or mixes of spices, because then you definitely, especially in the mixes, because then you cannot definitely know what is inside. Maybe it's not even saffron inside, and usually in these the lowest end grade of saffron is going into. So then you know that you are not getting any big quality. Especially also with just clean saffron powders as well. Our tip is always buy threads if you want, and if you need powder, then just make the powder yourself in a way from the thread, so you know that it's the saffron that you saw. So always buy threads if possible. I think this way then using the test that you mentioned, I think for us, especially if you are home or you are working with saffron, the water test is one that you can do very easily, and you will see based on the developments. I know there are YouTube videos as well which showcase how to tell as well, but of course in our course as well we provide some insights into this as well.
Yeah, that's an amazing point, Victor, and certainly something that everyone should use as standard of rule. At the end of the day, not only are you more likely to get adulterated saffron in a powdered sample, but you're also going to get lower quality simply because of the degradation of these compounds under the fact that these things were already macerated. And on top of that, their storage is just going to, decrease all the concentrated, beautiful compounds that you would like at higher concentrations. So Victor, I have one more for us, and then I want to dive into the last topic here. So let's keep this one as short as possible, but I think this is a good one to end on. What are the risks of starting an indoor vertical farm for saffron?
Well, I think the risks are commonly shared with all the other farms. It's basically you not getting the business. So I think the bread and butter of all businesses is selling. Selling is what can cure all sickness in business. It's always sales. Everything starts with sales. If you don't have sales, you cannot run a business that is going into negative unless you have a huge bunch of money sitting on the side, which you can eat out of basically for the business. But unless the business is not making any money, it's but the risk is there are multiple, I think, risks. From the growing point of sight, something can go wrong during the growing process and you can ruin the whole batch of saffron in a way, so you don't have any harvest or any saffron that you can sell. But the general risk is just not getting enough business, or not entering the market in a way, or penetrating the market at the beginning. That's why we suggest starting small with let's say little amount of investment in the beginning, so you can do a little trial and error and see everything yourself on how it works on a certain amount of scale, and then you basically just multiply base your unit of scale if you need to for the simplicity. But I think the biggest risk is just in a way you losing some time and money. in the end, if you cannot sell successfully or in a way grow successfully as well, I think those two go hand to hand together, because you are not able to do one without the other. But that's why again I'll compare this. I know I mentioned it multiple times, but we suggest people starting on smaller scale, so you don't end up wasting a lot of money in the beginning. If it doesn't end up, start smaller scale with the budget that you have available, which you are comfortable in a way losing in a way. I don't want to compare the setting up a business with investing, that you should put in the money that you are willing to lose in a way, but this is how it works with businesses. I think generally with businesses, only 1 out of 10 businesses is basically up and running after 3 years from inception. So generally in any business you start, the numbers are against you. This is on all industries, so I think you just have to go for it. I think this is this easiest part. If it's something that interests you and you would like to get into the saffron space, just start. Just give it a shot. Start somewhere. Just read a book, watch a video, start there, and then you will see. Once you have more information, after some time, you can make the decisions. Okay, this is something I want to pursue or not.
Excellent. Appreciate all that, and I know everyone watching and those who are going to be watching this recording will certainly appreciate that as well. So, Victor, I think it'd be great to end here in the last 5 minutes we have with a really nice discussion about the Saffron book and course, and really introducing people to the fact that this type of format that you and I are doing right now is something that will be offered on a monthly basis to the people that buy the course and book. And we already have a really nice channel that is set up just for the whole book and course, and so that in itself is a let's say close-knit community where we really go above and beyond, trying to offer basically the resources that everyone would need, and then some, to really go from, hey, I'm just starting my journey, or I'm mid-journey, or I'm even at, let's say, very experienced level of my journey, but I want to elevate where I'm at. And we basically address each 3 different archetypes, and we're able to offer very personalized communications, a more advanced chat where we talk about things with everyone in the whole community. But, Victor, what would you like to add in terms of why do you think this educational resources that we're offering is going to be so revolutionary to the industry?
What I think the unique proposition, or the unique value proposition, I think what we bring is that we provide, let's say, multiple variations of the information. So we don't only do the book, which is very comprehensive on any amount of topic regarding saffron, but we also provide videos, which are tutorials on how to do certain stuff, so maybe harvesting, but we also showcase our farm and how can you spot a sick bulb. So we go in depth on everything, also from the practical point of view. I think one of the big benefits that we have over here, that we are connecting the educational side of the sphere and the practical side of the sphere together, so you can get basically all the knowledge plus the practical side on it, because we provide the other side as well. Since you mentioned we do like a comprehensive, so since you are a beginner you can find a lot, but if you are experienced you can find a lot of tips as well, or other areas which will help you grow. Plus then on top of that we also provide the community factor, or let's say together, where on monthly sessions like this you will be able to meet us, or you can meet us privately as well, where we can discuss your project as well. We already had few meetings, especially on, let's say, our side from beginning, where we discuss certain projects with people that already are starting their farm. So we help you in a way start your own farm, where you can come with all the designs, all the codes. We go over them, we discuss everything. So we provide an ongoing, let's say, support, hence the community, because I think one thing what we missed in the beginning is other farmers that we can talk to, which share the problems that we have. So if I have a certain problem, I can share in the group, and some farmers will already message back, I had the same issue, I solved it like this. And I think this is already going on in the community, and I think we want to build upon. And the general idea, or what we want to provide, is in a way one-stop shop for saffron. So everything regarding the saffron industry. So if you are a grower, you will be able to learn everything that you need for the growing process. If you are just somebody who is working with saffron as a commodity, as a trader, there is stuff for you as well. If you are just somebody who is a hobbyist and wants to grow in his garden, there is stuff for you as well. So there is a lot of also details on, or I would give it in a way, there is a lot of value that you get beforehand or upfront that you would have to learn by trial and error, which would take you a certain amount of time, money, and other stuff which we help you skip in a way. So this is, I think, one of the best advantage. And then you have access to people like me and Khalil, where you can discuss in depth with topics of saffron, and so we help you grow the business, or we can give you tips, we can connect you with people. So it's more of also like a course, but there is also networking going on. So we are building like a little saffron sphere which grows in influence.
Yeah, and I'll just go ahead and add prior to closing out here that this book I've read, nearly every book out there on saffron, unless it's in a different language, granted. And I can go ahead and say I have not seen any of these books really cover both the indoor and outdoor cultivation. The book that we've been working on, that's already 100 plus pages worth of beautiful work, has really broken down both outdoor and indoor cultivation in a very easily digestible manner, and it is very actionable. More importantly, last but not least, I'll just add that we really cover, like Victor said, the whole 360. All the questions that we covered here briefly are expanded on, everything from adulteration to grading and testing to drying and storing. And my favorite part, at least in writing this book with Victor and some colleagues, is that, personally, because of my background, I love nutrition, I love herbal medicine, and the part on the materia medica of saffron is so expansive that we really break down everything from traditional knowledge on all the 90 plus uses that have been stated in traditional knowledge literature, all the way to the more, let's say, contemporary evidence-based medicine that really points at, hey, here are these amazing trials that have been done. And we dive into, the major uses of saffron according to the literature, both from our expert consensus and in terms of expert consensus in the literature. So things like mild to moderate depression, premenstrual syndrome, PMS, therefore, and age-related macular degeneration, so diseases of the ocular system of the eyes, right? And we really dive deep into that literature. And so this is something that, when you put it together, is a very advanced manual and narrative for understanding, hey, everything from getting started to, even using your saffron for yourself, your friends, your family. I certainly find it to be a indispensable, valuable resource that there's really, I don't find any other book that currently is as comprehensive. But Victor, would you like to say a couple closing out words for us on the course and book? And I know, Victor, you said earlier, just to put another plug into it, that we're looking to do a launch sometime next month. So certainly stay tuned as we gear up for that launch, that exciting launch.
Yeah. So I would just end on, as we are gearing up for launch, there will be more content and information coming out. There will be stuff prepared for everybody once we are prepared in a way where you can see all the information. I think especially the table of contents will be published, so you can check out that one without even buying the book, so you know what is the insides of the book. And maybe we can prepare like a small snippet of what you can find in the book as well. But I would like to thank you, everybody who sent the questions, who also didn't join, of the people who joined the live as well. And I want to thank you as well for the wonderful conversation about saffron. I really like the format of us bouncing the questions one-to-one. I think we went over with everything. I agree on that certain topics would require even 10 workshops wouldn't be enough to go over everything, which can be, for example, just business, just drying, just adulteration. There is a bunch of stuff that is that we can go more in depth to. So I think what we will also do with the course, we'll have a monthly session where we will do little Q&A, but we'll go also in depth on certain topics as well. So I'm looking to continue this let's say, format in a way, so we can also bring information to the people, but we can also answer concrete questions which the people then will be able to check up now or either later on, so they can find their answers. And if anybody is looking for information or setup or the course, feel free to reach out to me or Khalil. We are happy to talk to you, and I hope to see you in the community, or sometimes live, or maybe sometime in person with some people from the community. So that would be all.
Yeah, excellent. Appreciate you, Victor. Appreciate your time, and much obliged again to everyone, like Victor said, that showed up live.